Shaggy is now officially the most powerful pirate in the history of One Piece. Move over Roger, Rocks, and even Emu, because there is a new Queen of the Sea, able to, with one word, raid islands, command army of pirates, and topple entire kingdoms, all without ever having to swing a sword or shoot a gun. Just one wink, and the entire world is hers. So this flashback has gone from being Loki explaining to us how he found his father being skewered by his own men, to then an origin story for his dad, then for him, then back to his dad, then to Rocks, back to his dad again, and now we've once again shifted over to a new character, putting a strong focus on Shaggy, revealing how with just a smile, she basically conquered every island she ever went to. Seriously, 2 chapters in a row showing how she basically had some of the most powerful men in the history of the world eating out of the palm of her hand? Yeah, Shaggy's him. And we'll get back to her later on in the video because there is a crazy implication surrounding her and a certain event that I did not see coming. But first, we have to talk about the chaotic mess that is the Rocks Pirates. Because one of the first things we see of them in the opening of the chapter is a crew raiding what was supposed to be a charity focused on providing funds to orphan kids. Which, I mean, yeah, they are pirates, they steal from anyone. Though, to their credit, the place they stole from was actually a scam, so they are stealing from other criminals. But at the same time, it's not like they plan to give that money to an actual charity. And hell, if it was up to half of them, the other half of the crew wouldn't be getting the cut either because they tried to bury them underground while escaping from the island, only failing due to Whitebeard using his devil fruit to cause an earthquake. I know they said in the last chapter that this crew has a tendency to betray one another, but I didn't think we'd be seeing that in action so soon. I especially wasn't ready for how giddy Shiki was about the whole thing. It's almost like betraying each other is a game to them. Zebek even calls it that when he's waiting on them to get to the ship. Because I mean, there was literally zero benefit for Shiki to try and bury Whitebeard, Kyo, and Kaido here besides doing it for the lulz. And I get the feeling that if it being funny is one of the main reasons why members of the crew betray the others, then these 3 must be the main targets of said betrayal because they seem to be the more serious members while everyone else is just out for a good time. And nothing's funnier than screwing with someone who's always being serious. Though I do imagine that this probably leads to a lot of infighting, and had the Marines not showed up when they did, they probably would have leveled the entire island going at it. But I think this opening actually shows just how good of a leader Zebek really was, because again, there was no benefit in fighting the Marines here. They got what they came for and they could have just left. Instead, he made them take out all of that anger and aggression they were about to take out on one another and focus that energy on taking out the Marines right in front of them. That way, by the time they got back to Pirate Island, they wouldn't be at each other's throats. And this is probably why the crew had such a big stat sheet of destruction during their run, because each time they went somewhere, things probably played out exactly like this. It's no wonder that until its defeat at God Valley, this was considered Rox's era, because letting them go wild on the Marines and kingdoms they raided was the only way to keep this chaotic crew together. It's probably also why they fell apart so soon after that historic event. Without Rox there to mediate and target their aggression, it was either kill each other or go their separate ways. Which honestly, I'm more shocked that they did the latter over the former. But moving on to the supposed main focus of this flashback, Harold, who was also having his own standoff with the Marines just outside of an island called Inishi, getting between them kidnapping some civilians, assumedly to take them back as slaves for the Celestial Dragons. And this scene is basically the inverse of the one with Rocks, because coming from that scene, I actually feel sorry for the Marines attempting to stop them. Because for one, they're basically being sent to their deaths, considering the crew has a known reputation for completely destroying everything in their path, especially when they're being used as a way for the crew to let out their aggression. And these are pirates that at the very least vice admirals should be sent to take on, maybe even admirals, not everyday officers. So it gives me the feeling that I actually want to root for them to survive this encounter. Not win, there's no hope of that, but at the very least be able to escape with their lives. But this group that Harold's dealing with, I am actively rooting for him to sink them to the bottom of the sea. Because for one, like I said, they are seemingly here to take these people in as slaves for the simple crime of not being part of the world government, making the Nishis in their eyes less than human. But also because this guy just has an extremely evil and punchable face. Like seriously, I haven't seen a face asking to be punched as much as this one since Bellamy. And he really wasn't helping his case by being so overly evil here, shooting that woman for absolutely no reason. Harold sinking the ship and rescuing the people who were kidnapped was the only outcome that would have come from that. And part of me wonders if this whole incident was set up by the world government to trick Harold into attacking one of their agents who was simply, as far as they would report, just doing his duties as a member of the Marines, in order to sell to the rest of the world just how dangerous the giants of Elbaf were, putting them back into a corner by erasing all the good reputation he had built over the years in one fell swoop, so that they can try and force Harold to listen to their demands at the end of the chapter. Which said demands are to kill Zebek, and if he does, then they will make him a member of the world government. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I don't see him going through with it. At the most, I can see him possibly getting in a fight and overpowering Zebek, but choosing not to at the last second, because straight up murdering someone to get this is not who Harold is. But this is exactly the kind of evil that Rox has been warning him about, in that the world government is constantly pulling these kind of stunts, and that it's not worth it for someone as good-hearted as him to try so hard to win them over. He even tries to get Ida to convince Harold in this chapter while the two are drinking at her bar, which she uses as a chance to take a quick jab at Zebek instead. But listen, there is a lot of truth in what he's saying here. There is a lot of evil rooted in the heart of the world government, especially with the higher-ups, and while they may not know exactly who they work for, there are plenty of agents in the lower ranks who would be more than willing to follow their plainly evil orders. That's the side of the world gov that Zebek is at war with, and why he is so against the idea of Harold or any giant working with them. But at the same time, there are people like Garp who are actively just trying to do some good. It's a fine balance within the organization, one that I think Harold believes he can help tip towards the good side once he joins the world gov. But Zebek knows that as long as Emu is in charge, that's never going to happen. Also, this does bring up a good question. Has Zebek told Harold about Emu? Because if he has, then it's hard for me to believe Harold could actually think joining the world gov would be a good thing for Elbaf. He would definitely do much more good as an independent nation. Based on the ending of this chapter, I think we'll have a better understanding on whether or not he knows in the next chapter, but for now, I'm just going to assume that he doesn't. Moving on to Garp though, we check in with him, Suru, and Sengoku as they're all complaining to Kong about the whole Harold situation. And I found it funny that the other three got their future ranks highlighted in their nameplates during the scene, but since Garp never advances any further in rank, his just says Luffy's grandpa. But the three of them have in their mind, especially Garp, for some reason, that Kong would be able to influence things to allow Elbaf to join the world gov, mostly because they are afraid that the longer he's turned away, the more chances Zebek has to convince him to join his crew, which I would get that mindset, and they might be right if he was the fleet admiral, but as of right now, he's just a normal admiral, so there's not really much he can do. Though this does show us where Luffy got his line of thinking from, because just like his grandson, Garp is completely uninterested in the politics behind this, and just thinks that since Kong has a position of power, he can do it, so he should. Which again, maybe if he was a fleet admiral, he might have had some influence here, but as the normal admiral, not much he can do. And speaking of having a position of power, Zebek's spot as king of Pirate Island is very quickly challenged in this chapter, but doesn't seem like he minds very much by the arrival of Shaki on the island, who the second she steps foot on the dock, the entire population of pirates all fall head over heels for her, and basically wait on her hand and foot, including all the male members of the Rocks Pirates, including Zebek and Newgate. Now, the reason she's here is because she decided to step down as queen and captain of the Kuja Pirates due to the very relentless pursuit by the world gov she was facing, likely due to some celestial dragon getting wind of her beauty and wanted to take her as his personal wife-slave. Though I imagine even they will be putty in her hands at the first sight of her in person, and she will be ruling over the entire male population and some of the females of the Holy Land once she got there. But she has no interest in being tied down to anyone, at least not yet. We all know eventually she will make a dishonest man out of Rayleigh, but until then, she plans on hiding out on Hachinosu, hoping that an island full of pirates, including the current most dangerous pirate crew, would be able to keep her safe. Which, on paper, was a pretty smart plan. Like I said, the second she got there, everyone was basically ready to give her whatever she wanted. She even got Zebek and Newgate to give her some free labor and clean up her bar, becoming known as the crown jewel of the island. But this chapter heavily implies that things, they did not go well. And that said treasure that Zebek had invaded the hunt on God Valley for was not one of the devil fruits he needed in order to complete his goal, but instead was Shaki, who had been kidnapped. Which I've seen some mixed responses to online. On the one hand, people are upset that seemingly the strongest pirate in the history of the One Piece world ended up losing its life in an attempt to save a woman, no matter how beautiful she may be, especially since she wasn't officially part of his crew. On the other hand though, people think that this is such an older thing to write that they love the idea. Personally, I'm more in support of this idea than I am against it, because I just think it's funny for this to be what brought an end to Zebek, especially because now the implication is that Roger and Garp both fought and defeated him over a woman that neither would end up with. Plus, we gotta admit, it does make Sebek lose some cool points if he just let the world government come to his island, kidnap someone, and then not retaliate. Like, whether or not she was part of his crew, something like that happening is not a good look for someone in his position. But at the same time, I will say that I hope that she is only part of the reason he went there, and that maybe at the same time that they kidnapped her, they also got away with one of the fruits he was after he just got it. And it wouldn't be hard for them to do both of those things if they have a traitor on the inside, which Whitebeard hints at there being one in the beginning of the chapter. And while we can pretty safely write off him, Kaido, and Goryosa, any of the other pirates on this crew could very easily be the traitor. But we'll have to wait for a future chapter to find out who.